Welcome back to Tell Me More with me, CJ Quartlbaum. Tell Me More exists to help bridge the gap in our intergenerational workplace dynamics and build better leaders. We get to have interesting conversations here. And today we are going to do that with men's coach, Harrison Orr. Harrison, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man.
Harrison, I'm from New York. I have a very Brooklyn accent. I'm hearing an accent on you. Tell the people about yourself. Who are you? Where are you from? And what do you do now?
So my name is Harrison Orr. I'm from Sydney, Australia, so a little bit further south from you guys. I'm, like you said, a men's coach, and I help business owners and high-performing men reclaim their energy, their presence, and their power.
You help high-performing men reclaim their energy, their presence, and their power. What does that mean?
That means, I guess, I'll start with what it looks like when men don't have those things that might resonate with a few more men. When we don't have our energy, I don't specifically just mean energy to get up, start the day, get things done, do all that kind of stuff, which, we often band-aid with more caffeine and stimulants. But the energy in which we do things, right? It might sound a little bit spiritual, a little bit hippie, but the energy that kind of radiates from us, you can tell when you talk to a man who is in control of himself, who's self-assured, who's confident, he just radiates this, I guess, confident masculine energy versus someone who's a little bit tired, beaten down, not quite sure of himself, and he's quite meek and a bit of a people pleaser, a bit of a nice guy, a yes man type thing, very different energetically. And that's the kind of energy that I'm talking about there. And then the presence aspect is when we're not present, we're overthinking, our mind is running a million miles an hour. Our wife and our kids will pick that up more than anyone else. They can tell when we're physically there, but we're still thinking about work stuff. We're thinking about what we've got to do later. We're thinking about all these other chores or things that are going on, but we're not actually there with them. We're not giving them our undivided attention. And that even happens at work too, because we're not focused. We're jumping from tab to tab, from task to task, and then our productivity goes through the floor because we're not actually present in what we're doing. And then that power also comes into that play as well, because it takes a fair bit of power and control to be able to be disciplined and stay present, stay focused, actually have a purpose, live in alignment with your values and move through the world with that level of confidence and direction, right? So a bit of a overview of what that could look like for some guys where they're at now.
That's good. I want to hone in on this presence piece for a minute, because we live in an anxious society and we live in a hyper multitasking society. And when you bring those two things together, it can be really detrimental for your mental, your emotional, your physical, your spiritual health. You said, your wife and your kids will be the first ones to point out, you're here, but you're not here. And I cannot tell you the amount of times I've been staring off into space thinking, and my wife goes, where are you? Yeah. So how do you help coach men through that particular presence piece? Because I think that's a big part of just who we are, is how we show up in this world.
Yeah, 100%, man. And, some people will point the finger to, social media, how much that's limited people's attention span. Some people will point it to things like ADHD and all that kind of stuff. But where I see it coming from and where I start with guys and helping them with this is regulating their nervous system. Because specifically the autonomic nervous system. So we've got two branches of that. We've got our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest mode. We're calm, we're relaxed, we're chilled, we're just at peace in present. Then we've got our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight mode. Most people have heard of that. When you're stressed, cortisol's high, you go, go, go. And most people spend way too much time in that fight or flight mode. When we're in fight or flight, we're always reactive. We're from one task to the other. We're not fully relaxed. And that inhibits our ability to be present in what we're doing, because we're looking for the threat. We're looking for a way to get out. We're looking for something to react to. And because of stresses that just happen in life, sometimes it's work, sometimes it's finances, sometimes it's even relationships or whatever else might be going on, or even just too many stimulants and poor sleep for a lot of guys, it keeps us in that state. And by just regulating that nervous system, simply through breath is probably, to be honest, the easiest way to bring someone back into their body, back into that present state. It then allows them to actually sit there, be present in their own body, first of all, for kind of what they're feeling, and then be present for their wife, for their kids, at work, whatever it might be that they're doing, right?
What difference does presence make for a man?
Massive, man. Like, presence in literally everything. Like, if we look at what's happening if you're not present, if we're thinking too much about the past, then most people would consider that depression. If we're thinking too far into the future, most people consider that anxiety, because we're worried about what's going to happen. If this happens and that happens, and playing that out. Both of those are in our imagination, but we're not right here, right now. And the only thing that we can actively control is the right here, the right now. And so if we move through life always focusing on things that we can't control right now, we actually miss what we're doing right now, which means when we're at work, we're not productive in what we're doing because we're disjointed. We're focusing on this and that and then this. I read this study and they said when someone is in a deep focused workflow and they get interrupted, maybe it's a notification, maybe someone taps on the door like, hey man, you got 5. On average, takes them 20 minutes to get back to that focus state. And that's assuming that you haven't been interrupted again in that 20 minutes. And so even just going 20 minutes without interruption, I can't, unless someone is very deliberate about their work environment and their setup, I can't say there would be too many people that would get that kind of a stint. And so you can see how then that plays out throughout the workday, how often we get distracted and how we lack that presence. And so the productivity suffers, which then means we're either not getting tasks done to the highest degree or in the most time efficient manner, which often for a lot of guys means that, especially if they run a business, they need to work longer hours. They need to stay back later. They need to work on weekends, which then impacts their personal time or time with their family. And then so like if we then convert that into or to like relationships, not just romantic, but any connection with another human, if you're not present with them, you might kind of hear the words that they're saying. That some people may not even hear that if they're really that disconnected, but you might be able to hear what they're saying, but you won't be able to feel what they're saying. And especially when we're communicating with our wife or with the feminine, feeling what they're saying is much more important to hearing what they're saying. Because if you can feel what she's trying to communicate, you stand a chance at helping meet those needs that she's trying to communicate. And that's where I see, I've definitely gone wrong so many times in the past. And that's where I see a lot of other men go wrong is like, we're logical creatures, right? So we respond to the words. It's like, yeah, I'll clean it up later. I'll clean it up later. We think that she's just nagging about cleaning up the fucking garage, right? But underneath that, she's like, you said you'd do this 10 times already and you haven't done it. I'm upset that you're not being impeccable with your word because I can't trust that when you do say you'll do something that you're actually going to do it. And so if I can't trust your word, it means I can't trust you. And I want to, but like I'm not feeling that right now because you're not giving me proof that I can. That's a deeper level of like feeling and connection and problem that needs to be addressed as opposed to take 30 minutes to clean the fucking garage, right?
That's a deeper level of communication because it's not just the words on the surface. It's what's under the words. It's what's happening in the person. It's practicing empathy. How many relationships, romantic or otherwise, break down because of a lack of communication?
Exactly. Like I would say so many men, they either just break down or they just slowly just fizzle out, drift apart, become roommates because there isn't that connection. And for a lot of guys, it's not that they're doing it intentionally, but they're not in tune with their own body and their own feelings, and not from a soppy feminine standpoint, but just being in tune with their own body to be able to recognize their own feelings, work through those, articulate them, and then communicate what's relevant. So if they can't do that for themselves, how do they stand a chance at then being able to try and understand their partner, which if you've got a female partner is a whole different world of trying to understanding for a logical brain. Right? And so it's
Yeah,
like
I mean,
trying to learn a new language for a lot of guys.
yeah, I grew up in a world where men were not taught to be in tune with their feelings, and now so much of the work that I do on the coaching side is I'm coaching leaders on that inner work. I need you to name what's happening in here and what happened back there and how it's showing up now. As a kid, the only things you were allowed to feel were anger and lust. But I find that if those are the only feelings we allow men to access, it's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for poor communication. And now what I'm seeing working with Gen Z is we have a group of men who are coming up who are really just boys who can shave. And when it comes to communication, to inner access, to accessing the world outside of their screens, they're lost. What I'm curious from an Australian perspective, are you seeing some of these same trends amongst Gen Z men?
Very much, man. Like what really gave me highlighted all of this, gave me a very good frame for kind of understanding this whole situation. Because at first I thought, like, am I the only one that is running off this operating system? And then I read, this was, how long ago was this? Maybe 6 years ago? No More Mr. Nice Guy, where he highlights why a lot of guys are like this, why we, don't express our emotions, why we're kind of people pleasers a lot of the time, like why we do all the things that we do. And a lot of this stuff was, like you said, it's like how we were taught. Emotions make you weak. Vulnerability is a female thing. Just do not do that because you'll be kicked aside. That's not good to do. You don't express yourself, like you said. It's lust or it's anger. And for a lot of guys, anger is the default response to fear, right? Fear of being wrong, fear of rejection, fear of feeling something, fear of, like, what, depending on the situation, something else. And then so instead we feel angry because essentially when we're fearful, we're weak, right? We feel vulnerable, we feel scared. But when we get angry, cortisol goes up, testosterone can go up as well. We get this like fight or flight response, and that makes us feel powerful, right? We feel more equipped to handle the situation in our manly way. And that becomes the default response for a lot of guys. And when that goes either left unchecked, then we use that as the default way of responding, and we just become this very angry, emotionally immature and uncontrolled man. Or if we go the other way, we end up being told that anger is bad. You don't want to be angry. If you're angry, you're a threat to women, and that's bad. You don't want to do that. So we suppress that, and then we try to just blunt our anger and never feel it, which is not very helpful to suppress those emotions either, because we're not taught, I wasn't taught at least, how to express healthy anger. And then anger is healthy, right? All these emotions are not good or bad. They're just contextual. They're just tools and responses. It's how you use and express those, which then can make them less constructive or very applicable for the moment and situation, right?
Yeah. So in order for us to do this deeper work of being able to access the full range of emotions, as men, we need spaces that allow us to do that. Spaces that allow us to fail well as we're trying to figure this out. And that's where someone like you comes in as a coach. So how are you walking men through learning to access the full range of emotions?
So the big one is the regulating of the nervous system, right? Being able to be present, to be in tune with your body a lot more, because I found when guys are regulated a lot more, they have a much higher chance of being able to be present in what they're doing and cut off those default responses as it's happening. Because there's so many times throughout the day where a situation will happen or we'll get triggered, and then we respond in the same way that we've always responded. But it's when it's those situations that we're trying to change, that we're trying to actually sit there for a minute and think, why did that trigger me? Why is something emotional coming up from from what that person has said or from this situation, or why am I feeling this thing? Like you said, label it. Well, cool, what am I feeling? And then what am I going to do about this? Is it something that needs addressing? Is this a bit of a warning sign? How can I walk myself through this? And if it's, with somebody else there, what do I need to communicate to this person so that I'm not suppressing this, so that I'm not just bottling all this up and it's going to explode soon, and actually work together on this, especially if it's a partner.
So good. So good. Where do you see us going as men over the next, 25 years? 2050, it's almost here. It's going to come faster than we realize. Well, what are you seeing as the projection, the trajectory for men?
That's a big question, man. There's so many variables to that. Like on the one side, I really hope that men start to form stronger communities, start to bring back some of those initiations. Like at the moment, in the past, men used to basically be raised by their mothers and the women until they were 12, 13-ish, and then they would go through a masculine or an initiation from the men in the tribe or the culture, right? And then that would break them free. That would uncleave them from the mother. They would then go from boy psychology into mature masculine, right? They'd learn all the healthy ways of expressing this stuff. They'd learn what their role is as a man and all that stuff from the man, not trying to learn those things from a female, which is kind of what happened when all the strong guys went off to war, all the guys went to work and have been raised by mothers now until they're 20 kind of thing. Now, a lot of the time that initiation, if it happens at all, isn't till guys are mid to late 30s because of so many other factors. And by that stage, most of these guys already have families of their own and are now passing that stuff on to their kids, and that's if they change at all. And so I really hope guys start to find ways, whether it's through coaches or communities like we've grown or whatever other outlet that might be, to bring back that healthy masculinity, bring back that ownership, that power, that presence and direction, purpose in a healthy way. And I'm not going to say that it's going to be the same as it was, because for sure, like there's not many households now that can get away with one source of income, right? That's just, I don't know what's like over there, but over here, you'd be in the top 5% of earners if you only had one source of income for the house. So that old school, the mum or the wife stays at home, looks after the kids, the dad goes off to work, and that kind of dynamic is kind of gone. So we can forget that. But that still isn't the only way of creating that masculine feminine dynamic or that polarity between the relationship, right? And so I hope it starts to trend more towards that, because it's my belief and part of my mission that if we can help more men step into that space, then they can raise better sons through more of that initiation, through more of that healthy masculinity and that power, self-assured and self-validated power as opposed to externalized. And then once we've got better sons raised through those values, raised through that process, then we create a generation and a society of stronger, better men for the better. I hope it goes that way with AI and technology and all the distractions. Like, it's so easy to get all your cheap dopamine and satisfaction and pleasures met through internet and food and like gambling, drugs, like all the other things that don't require the hard work of being purpose driven and the effort there. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're so right. This idea of a rite of passage it's a thing of antiquity at this point. I've known maybe 2 or 3 guys in my life who have been intentional about that time with their sons. A good friend of mine, he's in his 50s and he's got 3 boys. And when each one turned 13, he had like a little ritual for them, a little ceremony. And he would have other men speak encouragement into them and say, hey, this is what I see in you. This is how I've seen you as a boy and what I see you becoming as a man. And I can say for each of his sons, they are far and away different from other men in their generation. And there's something there. What I've been noticing is I'm a millennial, middle of the pack millennial. So I'm pushing 40. I've got 3 kids. I talk to a lot of guys my age who will say to me, "Oh, I'm not ready to have kids yet." And I have heard a lot of women say this as well, but we're talking about men today. A lot of men pushing 40 going, "I'm not ready for kids." And it's like, you're halfway through life. At what point do you think you're going to be ready? Or what are you waiting on that you're missing out on the unique maturation that fatherhood brings?
Oh, 100%. Like being a father has been the most pivotal change in my growth, my level of maturity, like all the things by far. And I think most parents would say it's been the biggest change, right? Even my wife and I went through that kind of discussion for a while. Like we were trying to decide when we wanted to have kids, like the timing of it. And for us at the time, it was almost like the biggest factor of timing was coming down to financials, right? Because we wanted to, okay, we want to be in the house. We want to, be okay so that, when she's taking all this time off, that she doesn't have to rush back to work and, do all these things. And then we were kind of looking at the numbers and we're like, shit, well, with the current income and on this trajectory, we're not going to be in that position for another 5 years, which puts us close to 30. Then we're going to have him, like, we'll have a child at that point. And then, like, how much does that push everything back? And then when you start to factor in like biological clocks for women and the potential issues that can come up as they get beyond mid-30s, all that kind of stuff, we just like, man, that's a long time. And so we ended up just going with like, fuck it, we'll make it work. Right. And so, we've just got the one son who's 2 years old now. But I know a lot of people, like you said, that they're in that I'm just not ready. That's totally cool. But it's, like you said, what are you waiting for? Is it financials? Is it a personal maturity level? Hard to say as a blanket term. But I know one thing I realized since having a child is I realized how selfish I was. in terms of like, I like to do things when I like to do them, the way I like to do them. And like, I was a very structured person. Like, don't mess with my calendar. Unfortunately, newborns don't know how to read the time or a calendar, which is quite rude, to be honest. But, a skill set they haven't learnt in the womb yet. So flexibility and like that ability to adapt is one of the greatest skills I've learned, at least anyway, as a father. But I think a lot of people would do better if they're in that situation, if they actually don't want to have kids for whatever reason, to actually decide on that. Actually decide that, you know what, it's actually, I actually don't want to have kids. I actually like going solo. I like the freedom. I like doing this. I don't want to have to do all that kind of stuff. And that's totally fine. Like if they're the kind of person that feels pressured by society that the way you should do things is you grow up, you get married, you have kids, you have a stable job, you go through this kind of sequence. But otherwise, for other men, it might be they haven't quite figured out themselves yet. It's like, if I haven't figured out my life and I'm 40, how the hell am I going to raise a kid? Which is a fair question, right?
The older I get and the more I spend time with my gray head friends, do we ever truly figure it out? And in a world that does not lean toward introspection, are we ever going to get to that place? You and your wife crunching the numbers and looking at the time and ultimately saying, we'll figure it out. I feel like that attitude is probably more of life than anything else. We'll figure it out. Your son said, I'm not going to respect your calendar, but you still have all the things that you need to do. So you're like, I'll figure it out. And we're losing less of that, the grit and the resilience that says, I'm going to figure this thing out. And maybe we want a little too much to be planned and buttoned up for us.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes down to wanting a degree of certainty or control, right? Which we just flat out won't get. And so if we're always waiting for, regardless of whether it's to do with kids or it's to do with a business or a job or just, God, start going to the gym, right? If we're waiting for those perfect conditions, if we're waiting till I've got absolute certainty that I can afford it, that I can handle it, that everything's going to be okay, that like all my ducks are in a row, I can promise you there's always going to be something that comes up. There's always going to be that challenge, that obstacle, the whatever it is that tries to shake that. And one of the ways that I've come to accept and learn to be at peace with those things is a frame I heard from Alex Hormozy. Do you follow him?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
familiar.
beautiful. And when he talks about the man that you want to be, right? And he uses the example of like, the God or the creator, right? If you said to the creator, I want to be strong, well, he's not going to give you a free pass through life. He's not going to just give you everything that you asked for. He's going to give you opportunities to prove that you're strong. He's going to give you opportunities to prove that that's who you are. If you wanted to be resourceful, if you wanted to be patient, if you wanted to be stoic, if you wanted to be all these things, amazing. Now you get opportunities to earn those traits so that you've got proof of that's who you say you are. And that little shift has been like monumental in when these things come up. Like, fuck yeah, I get to prove that I am who I say I am or who I want to be in those spaces, right? And so it removes a lot of the uncertainty, because if I said I want to be strong, okay, cool. I know I'm going to have some hard shit to face. I know that for a fact. It's going to come up. Wonderful. And then so when it gets here, it's like, beautiful. Here it is. Let's go.
Yeah. Or it's, I get to learn from how I failed in that space. I said I wanted to be strong and I showed up weak. I said I wanted to be patient and I displayed impatience. What do I learn from how I failed so that next time I can be stronger? I can be more patient. I can be better. I had a guy in his early 20s a couple of weeks ago. We were talking and he goes, at what point do you just become mature? At what age do you think I have to flip the switch and grow up? And I was like, oh man, that's not how this works. Like maturity is something that you grow into. It is a natural progression of life. But if you're waiting for the day to flip the switch, it's never going to come because it's not how this works.
Exactly right, man. And I'd even say that it's not even a switch that you flip permanently either. Like I've seen a lot of guys that go so hard in the business and like their career side of things that they become so, sometimes it's not even mature, it's just serious, essentially, and forget that childlike curiosity. They forget to play. They forget to have fun along the way because it's, well, I can't rest. I can't stop until I've got to this point, until I've got the house, until I've made the money, until I've got the business, until I've got this, then I can relax. Then I can afford to play. Then I can afford to do these things. But again, that's like that full spectrum of balancing. Okay, well, now I've got to be serious. I've got to be mature. I've got to be these things in this environment or this situation. And then, okay, here I can kind of balance it out with that free flowing play and curiosity and everything else. But I agree. It's not a switch that you flip.
Yeah. Harrison, what made you get into coaching?
Personal experience. So it started off about 6 years ago. I was a chef. I was a PT, and my definition of health was a six pack, right? And I'd had that for quite a few years because I just trained like a maniac, barely ate anything. But my mental health and my nervous system was shot. But that was something that I wasn't considering as part of health. I didn't know anything about that stuff, which is wild for someone that's got epilepsy, completely disregarding sleep and stress and all those things. So I was just going about my business, drinking 10 shots of coffee a day plus pre-workout, barely sleeping, working in kitchens, doing, 5 a.m. starts for gym on the gym floor, all that kind of stuff. And then I saw someone online talking about like the nervous system and described all the things that I had, like or symptoms in terms of I was on all the time. I was irritable. I was anxious. I lacked confidence, and then I was like, oh, that's interesting. This is the first time I've heard this describe what I'm experiencing, or just use that wording at all. And so I was intrigued by that. Did some coaching with him and his course, and that was one of the, again, obviously other than fatherhood, the biggest shifts in my progress, my change of state, and even my now wife noticed it and contributes my biggest change to that point in looking after my nervous system, because I was prioritizing my sleep. I was looking after my nervous system so that I wasn't relying on so much caffeine. I was actually able to be present in what I was doing. So I wasn't always reactive. I wasn't picking fights and getting irritable and nitpicking over stupid things, making like passive aggressive remarks. I started to find confidence and value and validation for myself as opposed to seeking that from other people. And then not long after that, COVID hit, and this guy asked if I wanted a job. Like, I'd done some PT coaching, and a lot of this was still physical based, but just through the nervous system and approaches like that. And COVID hit, so wasn't able to work in the cafes or the gym anymore. So I took this up, and then been working online since. And then have slowly transitioned from nervous system work into more mental mindset kind of work, which is what a lot of the guys needed through the COVID period, being locked up, and all the challenges that came with that. And then just through my own progression have grown from there. So it's all from personal experience, being fried out, being a massive nice guy, not having that masculine presence or direction. So just through my own personal experience, and again, from the shift that I've seen it make in my personal life in every aspect.
That's often how it goes for us, right? We have these experiences and we walk out transformed, and then it becomes our life's work to go and help see others transform. I've got a question. All right. So in America, over in the States, when you go on our Instagram, it feels like 90% of fitness influencers are Australian. And then I went to Bali a couple of weeks ago, and I went to one of those kind of Instagram gyms, and 90% of the people there were Australian. So I want to know, what is in the water over there that you guys are all so fit and jacked?
I think on Instagram, it definitely, you get a larger portion of those people, if that makes sense. Like you definitely see more of the percentage over there, especially at Bali. You get a lot of the influencers congregate over there. I'm not entirely sure. I think as a population, I think we're still like 60% overweight. So it's still not like like as a percentage, like we're still not super fit and healthy like most of the population kind of used to be. But as a percentage, I'm not sure what would still be in that kind of category. I don't know what the differing factor would be between here and over there. I was going to say when it's nice weather, a lot of people are outside a hell of a lot more, but you guys get that just as much in summer.
Yeah. I feel like in some of our cities, you definitely get more of an outdoor presence, but I think in the States in general, we've become significantly more sedentary. The average teenager gets 75% of their diet from ultra processed foods. And then the average adult, it's like 66% of their diet. So we don't eat, we don't move well. I think that's it for us. We're on pace that by 2050, I think 80% of Americans are going to be overweight or obese.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I don't think the stats over here would be too different in terms of like the processed food consumption and things like that. And what's even crazier that aligns with that kind of stat is I've heard there was an estimate by 2050, the majority of men will be infertile.
Wow.
Like less than 10% of men will be fertile by 2050 just because of declining health, and therefore for men, declining quality and quantity of sperm. So, I don't know what it's like over there, but over here, majority of people have to go through some form of IVF or help in getting pregnant and having kids, right? Which only adds an extra barrier, both stress, journey, mental capacity, but also financially, because that's not a cheap journey for a lot of people either, to then going and starting a family too, right? So it's not just like, oh yeah, we're going to have a family and then just don't pull out. If that doesn't work, you've got, okay, well, now we've got to go on a health kick ourselves to try and do this the natural way. We've got to lose some weight, got to look after, like do all these things. And if that doesn't work, then you go to the specialist, then you start freezing the eggs and doing all this stuff, which is, again, another a barrier for a lot of people on multiple factors.
I want to say on average here, it costs about $40,000 to go through a round of IVF. I didn't realize the difficulty that a lot of people had getting pregnant until I got married and until we started talking to other couples. And, my wife and I, we were fortunate. We went 3 for 3, no real issues. But the amount of people we know who it took them 4, 5, 6 weeks. We have a couple we know that it took them a decade to get pregnant. And you think about 2050, the majority of men being infertile, just the impact that has on the population. It was only in the last few years that we've started to even have a conversation about, because even if you are fertile, but your sperm is unhealthy, that has a direct impact on your child. So we're only just starting to have these conversations. So could you touch a little bit on, for men specifically, what they need to do for optimal sperm health as they're thinking about becoming fathers?
Yeah. Well, I guess an easier way to kind of look at this, and I guess I'll relate this to a lot of hormonal health as well, because most guys recognize that they want to have I want to have more testosterone or optimal testosterone, right? That's usually the first thing that the guys want. And then if they're on that journey, then sperm health is like a derivative of that. Optimal health will provide you optimal hormonal health and optimal sperm health for most cases. Sure, there's a small percentage of people that will actually have something wrong with the testes or something wrong that inhibits that. But for most people, if you just look after your health, like you're of a healthy weight range, you don't have to be, sub 10% body fat, but just of a healthy range. So ideally somewhere less than maybe 15% body fat. If we cut out most of that processed food, you're going to your healthy. It doesn't have to be, ridiculous. If you go 80-20 rule, 80% of your food comes from your meat, your eggs, or fruits, veg, all that kind of stuff. Huge difference there. Then if you're just looking after your rest of your health in terms of you're getting your sunlight, you're getting your steps in, you're minimizing alcohol or drugs or like all those kind of things as well, then that puts you in a pretty good place, right? And that takes consistency too. You probably need at least 2 to 3 months of consistent like lifestyle changes in alignment with that to then see where your body sets up. Obviously, depending on how much weight you've got to lose will vary that journey length as well. But that's not just for sperm health as well. Like there's so many other benefits to doing all that as well. Also sleep, right? Sleep quality too. If you're not getting adequate sleep quality or quantity, then that's going to be the biggest impact on not just your hormonal health, but like everything, mental health, physical health, recovery, your libido in general, your mental capacity, literally everything. And so if you've got to start somewhere, start with your food and your sleep, and that'll take care of a big chunk.
So as we start to bring this to a close, I have 2 final questions. The first one is, in your coaching practice, what's been the most surprisingly common issue that you've seen amongst men?
A surprisingly common issue. Initially, like I guess this isn't surprising as surprising anymore because of what I've learned and the more people that I've spoken to. But the amount of guys that from the outset look like they have everything to be happy about, but still feel unfulfilled. So they've got the kids, they've got the house, they've got either a business or they're doing well financially, and they've got all these things, but they still feel unfulfilled. They still don't feel like they're enough. They still have this lack in their being, which you wouldn't know by just looking at their life on paper, looking at the photos and seeing everything. You wouldn't guess it. But the amount of guys that are in that kind of position is what shocks me. And I think that also speaks to the increased rate in male suicide as well. Like there's a lot of guys that don't look like their life is that bad. And that's a subjective opinion, but are still feeling like that. And so that's the biggest surprise from my journey.
Can't tell you the amount of guys that I've talked to, 50s, 60s, 70s, who are in that very position and would say to me, I would have killed myself a long time ago, but now it's just too late. But I've got it all and I feel empty. And there is a real crisis there. And we need space as men to be able to talk about these things and work through them and figure out, why is it that all of this stuff hasn't fulfilled us in the way we thought it would? Cheat. I think the answer is they were never designed to do that. And looking for them to fulfill us and complete us in a way that they weren't designed to is always going to lead to this road to emptiness. But we need to be able to have that conversation.
Yeah. Oh, 100%, man. And we get caught up, especially as bit of driven men, we get caught up on more, on, reaching higher heights, chasing bigger goals. Like we always move that goalpost. We get to this one thing. Awesome. How do we do more? How do we do it better? And we keep going. And we're so destination focused that we forget to enjoy the journey, right? And because the destination is often materialistic, it's when I get this, I will feel this. When I have that house, when I have that business, when I have that money, when I have this thing, I will feel fulfilled. I will be able to relax. I will feel this thing. But that isn't the case, because again, we're trying to come from a place of lack, and my worth and validation is justified on how well I can succeed or perform, instead of generating that stuff for ourselves and then pursuing through life through that place. And I think that's where a lot of guys get burnt out, because they're so focused on the things that they don't have, instead of coming from a place of fulfillment, purpose-driven alignment, and then still chasing those things. 100% should have purpose and goals, but not tying your worth and your fulfillment to the achievement of those things.
Yeah, to learning contentment in life. Tell me, give me 3 things that you would tell a man right now to improve their health: mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, on any plane. Here are 3 things that I think you can implement today to improve your health.
Today? Okay. Number 1, right now, and this is, I could probably give you one. It's probably most guys. Breathe. So right now, close your mouth, breathe through your nose, and breathe as if you're breathing into the back of your head. So directly back, not up, breathing back. And feel your diaphragm, like your ribs expand full 360, and then breathe in again, and then slowly exhale. And now that double inhale and that slow exhale is what's called a physiological sigh. That has been the only style of breath work shown to not only help reduce stress and increase presence at the moment of doing it, because most breath works will do that, but have that lasting throughout the day. They had guys do that for just 5 minutes. So just that style, just on repeat for 5 minutes. And for the rest of the day, they felt calmer. They felt more present. And so if you're about to go to work or go into a meeting, if you've just finished work and you're about to step in the door to go see your family or go do something, just spending a couple of minutes to do that, to realign yourself. And if there's stuff still on your mind from work or from the day, like you're just a bit scatterbrained, cool. This will be number 2. Get your pen and paper out, or just your notes on your phone, and write down everything that's on your mind. Those to-do lists, those open tabs that you haven't done yet, sure. If it's just a list, cool, write a couple. But if they're bigger items, put them straight into your calendar. That'll save you having to figure out when to do them, so that you've basically closed all the tabs. Mentally, physically, emotionally, you are now present. You're in your body. And then just remember to breathe when you go in, remembering that if your wife or your kids or someone like that maybe triggers you, that at the end of the day, they want the same thing as you, right? If we go macro enough, you should be on the same team. If you're not, that's a whole separate issue, right? I'm not going to touch on that. But assuming that you guys are on the same team, it's not a personal, if she's triggering you, it's not a personal attack. She wants you to be better because she loves you and she can see that potential in you, not because she wants you to feel like, like you're worthless or you're not good enough. Your kids are just testing you. Again, it's an opportunity. You get to show them how you handle when someone pushes your buttons, all these things. And so when you have done that breath work. You've done that presence practice of that brain dump. You can go through life with that level of presence and that level of connection. And then when inevitably something does set you off, set an emotional reaction, or you do get triggered, sit with that for a second. What's in this for me? What have I not owned here? Maybe one of these traits. Or where have I not been impeccable with my word? Like, why am I getting this reaction? Because there's a lesson there. And then you can take that back and either, if you've got a coach, work through that, or just sit with what you haven't known and what you can do about it. And then that level of self-awareness will change your life. Even just watch your partner, how they respond. If they're used to seeing you get defensive or reactive and they just see you take a breath, it will blow their mind. They'll be like, what the hell was that? I've never seen you do that. You're always defensive. You're always reactive. Like, what was that? Right. And that gives them stability and trust that, oh shit, he can control himself. He can regulate himself. And the amount of trust and relaxation you get from your partner in doing that is indescribable if you haven't experienced it before. But again, it comes from us, the power in ourselves. So I hope that's helpful.
No, that's really helpful. And I think the men listening to this, and even the women listening to this, they're gonna take something from that. Harrison, tell the people, where can they find you?
So best place to find me is on Instagram with the tag The Elite Father. So all one word. On there, got the links for any resources and other points of communication that guys can reach out to. There's the podcast in there. There's a couple of resources on a nervous system reset and a few other things in there as well. Or if something just sparked your curiosity or resonated, then just shoot me a message.
Follow Harrison. Check out his work. Harrison, thank you for joining me on this episode of the podcast.
Thank you very much
for
CJ.
watching. Thank you for watching, for tuning in to another episode of Tell Me More. Drop in the comments below. What's one nugget that you're going to take away with you as you seek to be a better man? Women, if you're watching this, don't now become that voice. Say, hey, maybe, point your husband, boyfriend, brother, whatever to the podcast, but don't try to be that voice for them. Help them to, discover this themselves. And I'll see you next time as I ask you.